What's up, creators? I hope you're all doing well. Today I'm going to show you how I achieve this composition that I use in basically all of my posts on Instagram for photos, but some of you have asked me as well how to achieve this for video. So first of all, we're going to jump into the photo editing program to see how to get these results, and then we'll jump into video. Having said that, let's jump into Lightroom first of all to edit these images. Now here in Lightroom, I have these three images selected, and I'm not going to dive into detail on how I'm going to edit them because, well, this tutorial isn't about that, but there are some things that we have to keep in mind in order for this composition to really work. Now, the first thing that I have to keep in mind is that the images, well, it's going to work a lot better if they're shot at the same day, at the same time, and in the same lighting scenarios. It's not going to work if maybe you have an image in the desert, then you have one at night, and then you have one in the mountains. It's not going to be a cohesion between all these images. Next, the second factor that I want you to keep in mind is that we want images which have a variety of angles. We don't want three landscapes because, well, what's the point of making a composition of three similar images? We want maybe a landscape, then we have maybe a portrait in the middle, and then a detail shot at the bottom. So in that way, you can make your composition a lot more dynamic and more interesting. And the third aspect is the color. Now, for these images to really work together, they need to be edited and color graded in the same manner, which is what I'm going to do right now. So starting out, we have these two images which are shot basically just a couple of moments between each other, but then we have this one which is going to represent a problem because it's shot like 3 or 4 hours in the same day before. So we're going to jump into the develop tab, and a very easy way to make these images work together or be edited in the same manner is using presets. So right here I'm going to use my autumn preset pack over here. I'm just going to select maybe the preset Stark, which I really like for urban photography. Just going to compensate a bit of the exposure, and of course this image is a bit tilted. Then going to move on to the next one. Again, once again, going to apply the same preset, which is Stark. Just make the adjustments that I want, and of course this one is again once again tilted. And then the one of myself as well, going to apply the same preset. Now I'm going to move the values around just to make it, just to match it a bit more with the overall exposure of the other images. Once we export them, we open them up in Photoshop, and here we have them all three loaded up. And we're going to start with the vertical one, and in this case I'm going to crop it to an aspect ratio which is useful for Instagram. Now we can use the 16:9, but I found it to be a bit too stretched for my taste. I'm going to use the 4:5, which is a very nice composition. We can see here how it's going to be divided in the rule of thirds. I'm just going to crop it. Next, I'm going to go up to the menus to view, going to select guides and new guide layout. Now over here we don't want any columns, we want some rows. We don't want any height or gutter in it. And here we're going to change the number depending on the number of images that we want our image to be composed of. Here we can go with maybe 4, 5 if you have 5 images that you want to make a composition. In this case I like to use number 3, and just going to select OK. And these guides are intelligent guides, so anything or any object or any image in our workspace is going to snap towards those guides. So it's going to be very easy for us to work and create a composition. So next I'm going to drag this image, I'm going to place this one at top, and then with Control T or Command T on your keyboard you can select the transform tools, and you can basically just scale it and stretch it if you want to whatever you need in your image. So in this case, just going to make it a bit bigger, and as you can see it's passing on to where the second image should be. Now here you can crop it, you can use the masking tools to delete this part. In this case I'm just going to select the rectangle selection tool over here, and as you can see it snaps towards the guides over here, so I'm making it very easy. I'm just going to delete that part. Then I'm going to do the same with the second image over here, and then I'm just Control T once again. I'm just going to align it where I want it to be. Now, one thing that I want to keep in mind or want to avoid is making all the focal points of the images be in the same line. As you can see, we have the tower over here, then we have our central subject in the center, and then this other tower in the center. And what this is creating is a vertical line of sight where the attention of all the images is going to the center. This isn't what we want. We want our audience to look around the entire composition, maybe to the left, maybe to the bottom, maybe to the bottom left, so they can appreciate the whole entirety of our composition. So what I want to do is maybe drag this one a bit towards the left over here, make it a bit bigger, something like that. In that way our central subject isn't centered in all of the frames. Then of course I'm going to delete the other part, and then we have these two which are aligned. What I'm going to do is just move the center one, Control T, and I'm not going to center myself. I'm just going to put me just a bit towards the right, something around there. And there basically we have our composition ready. Now there are some things that we can do to make it a bit more interesting. For example, sometimes I have images that are a bit too noisy, the backgrounds, or they're a bit too similar in terms of exposure and what it's in the image. So I like to place dividers between the images. So a great way to do that is just select the shape tool over here with the line selected, and then just add some width over here. And then basically we can use the intelligent lines to make sure it's centered in the middle of the divisions right here. And then with Alt on your keyboard pressed down, you can drag and just duplicate this layer and put it in the other guideline over here. And there you have it. Now we have some divisions, but in this case, I don't think they're needed. You can see clearly the difference between one image toward another. So I'm just going to hide them. Another thing that you can use to really make the composition really pop a bit more is maybe add some double exposure or other images into the frame. So in this case, I have this out of focus light that I shot at the same day. So I'm just going to drag it into our composition, and I'm going to put it down all the way to the bottom layer because that's the one I want to make a bit more interesting, because we have all this negative space at the left. Now I'm going to play a bit with the blending modes to select one, just going to go over them. Maybe I'm going to select screen over here, and then just going to select the masking tool over here. And now everything that I paint in this mask with black, with whichever tool that I use, is going to be deleted. So I'm going to use the brush tool, reduce a bit of the opacity, and just color myself out to make it work or to blend into the image. So these are the final results, and this image is basically ready to be posted on Instagram. This is the process that I take for all my posts in that platform, and you can also achieve a similar results with other apps. For example, Unfold in your smartphone is a great way to create compositions for your posts, but you don't have as much creativity or as much flexibility like you have in Photoshop. So that's how I achieve the composition for photos. Now let's jump into video, which in theory is a similar process, but it has more layers to it. So yes, we have to take into account the composition, the color grading, but then we have to add some rhythm into it, and then the music and sound effects. Video in general is more of a complete experience compared to still images. Now for this tutorial, I'm going to use DaVinci Resolve, but it's going to be exactly the same process for Premiere Pro or Final Cut because, well, they have exactly the same tools. So let's jump into it. Okay, creators, now in my editing software right here, I have all my clips already in the timeline. And as you can see, well, they're grouped or color coded, but then I have them in 3 different layers. Now, this is to make them play at the same time. So right here, for example, I have this one of the Acropolis on Athens. Then if I hide it, we have this one at the same time. And then below we have all these. These are going to be playing at the same time in our composition, and the same thing occurs with all the other images. Right here we have this one, then at the top we have this one, and then we have this other. Now the first thing that I want to do is change our timeline or a sequence, if you're in Premiere Pro, into a vertical aspect ratio, because right now we're in horizontal. So I'm going to select our timeline or sequence, and then timeline settings, and over here we're going to change our values to vertical. Now in DaVinci Resolve, just mark this use vertical resolution, and it will automatically change it to vertical. Maybe in other editing softwares you have to introduce the values manually. Now as you can see, all our clips are stacked in the middle. This isn't what we want. We want them to be up, one in the middle and one in the bottom. Now opposing to Photoshop, right here we don't have any guides or any rulers to help us out with the composition. Now if you do know how to activate them, or maybe I'm missing a step, put it down in the comment section down below to help us all out. But another way you can do it is what I did, which is create a PNG file with a composition, with some guides, some base guides in Photoshop, and I'm just going to import it and drag it on top of all my layers over here. And if we zoom in just a bit, we can see here we have our 2 guides that I created in my PNG file, which are going to work as a basis to know where an image should end and when another should start. So what I'm going to do is move the top one that we have arranged over here in the video 3 layer over here, just move it up in the Y axis to be on top of the guide over here. I'm just going to use the guides that we created as a reference. Then the one in the bottom, just going to make it a bit bigger, something like that. And then finally just move the one at the bottom, the Y-axis towards the negatives, something like that. Now of course you can keep these guides or the black bars if you want. In this case I'm just going to hide them to see what we have down below, and there we have it. There we have our composition just playing. Now how do we apply the settings to all of the rest of the clips on our timeline? It's very simple. Now we have them arranged in layers. We can just select the top layer over here. I'm going to right click this top clip, copy, and just going to select all the other clips in the same layer. I'm just going to paste the attributes, hit OK. And as you can see, now we have our top one over here ready in the other clips. Just going to select the one in the middle, copy, select all the ones in that layer, paste the attributes, and do the same with the bottom one. And there we have our composition ready in all of our mini sequences. Now, of course, after this, what you need is some music. Now, the music that I like to use is from Epidemic Sound, just so I don't have any problems or copyright claims. So I'm just going to drag one of their songs. You can check it out, link down below in case you want to try them out for 30 days completely free, and you can cancel anytime soon. So I'm just going to drag Calling Me from Uy, which is a very nice song. Now, for this video to work, of course, we have to cut the clips towards the beat of the music to make a cohesion between the video and the music. Of course, we can also add some titles, and then we're going to color grade all the clips that are appearing at the same time in the composition need to be edited in the same manner to make it work. And I'm not going to dive into detail on how I color grade in DaVinci Resolve. That's a story for a whole nother day. Put me down in the comment sections if you're interested in that video. But as a result, we have this composition.